Welcome to Mercy and Trust CPD, the Behaviour series. This is session 3, how to teach good behaviour for learning. I'm Mark Goodwin, the Director of Behaviour, Attendance and Wellbeing. And this is part of a 5 or sometimes 6-part behaviour series that takes you through behaviour, classroom behaviour, from the very start, from the setup, right to challenging behaviour. So you're landing right in the middle of that series. Episode 3, session 3, brings us up to probably the end of the establishment phase. By the end of today's session, we'll start to talk about de-escalation and pre-escalation. But that will leave session 4 and 5 and maybe 6. Sometimes people ask for a 6th session. That will leave later sessions to deal with challenging behaviour. So without further ado, we'll start working through some ideas, some think pieces, and there are some activities for you to do within this approximately 50-minute session. So for those of you who were with me last time, a quick summary of session 2. We were looking at practical learning behaviours, still in the establishment phase, but maybe some ideas and some think pieces around behaviour that you may not have come across before. We spoke about growth mindset. We spoke about encouragement, because remember, we want to really emphasise and shine a spotlight on the behaviours that we do want. Within that session, we talked about communication, but we also recognise that there are, when it comes to behaviour, there have to be consequences for poor behaviour. And we spoke about looking at them as mistakes, allows the young person to come back from that mistake and hopefully learn something and get onto a better pathway with behaviour. But I also spoke about emotional agility, and that is reference to our ability as teachers to manage our own emotions in order that we can best work with young people. So that's a summary of session 2. If you weren't with me with session 2, at least that gives you some idea of what's gone before. And today's session is looking at simple and targeted approaches. These references, the language of this session, it really corresponds with the Education Endowment Foundation Improving Behaviour in School, because we are, as we remind ourselves constantly, research informed when it comes to aspects of our classroom practice. I'd just like you to have a think, really. What does appropriate student behaviour look like? And I've given you three situations in any classroom, in any day, every day, where you're going to talk. So when you are talking, what is appropriate student behaviour? When the students are working independently, when you set them on task, what does appropriate student behaviour look like? And then paired or group discussions. 3 learning behaviours in most classrooms, most days, most of the time. Just give that some thought. Just pause the video and have a think about what does appropriate student behaviour. If you're watching this with somebody, even better, pause the video and have a discussion. Okay, it'd be fascinating to see what you've come up with, but here's some ideas around these 3 learning behaviours in the classroom. When you're talking, you want the students to have eye contact on you. Clearly, they're not talking. They put their hands up to answer questions, and they are listening actively. Now those expectations will have been outlined in September and established over the course of the year. With some classes, that is almost a constant reminder. Sometimes you have to be very explicit. We're doing this activity now. I'm talking, so remember, eyes on me. You're not talking. Put your hands up. Young people forget. Children forget. They go from lesson to lesson. You may work in a school where these routines are established at a whole school level. Not every school is like that, so it's about you in your classroom. But this is appropriate student behaviour. These are your expectations when you're talking. When I see classrooms that are wobbling with behaviour, this is often the starting point. That the teacher is not listened to, the students aren't paying attention, the students aren't listening, let alone active listening, and they're just calling out or even walking around. This is where you tighten up the expectations in your classroom. One very easy thing: you're the teacher. If anybody in that classroom is going to learn today, and remember, young people in your classroom are ready to learn. If you're going to learn today, then I have to be able to explain, to tell, to instruct, that because I am the teacher, and I'm giving you the kind of language that would couch these expectations. So when you're talking, be very clear, and this is where you hold the line. They don't talk over you. They keep eye contact on you. They put their hands up because you're interested in what they've got to say and you want contributions. You'll use your questioning skills. They put up their hand. Active listening. I was listening, sir. Well, it wasn't active listening because you weren't. Active listening comes with eye contact and comes ready with a response when I ask you a question. So active listening is something important. All the time you're preempting any pushbacks. You know that this is an opportunity in a class where things can go awry. So with your expectations, with a clarity like this, you're going to avoid any misunderstandings. What does appropriate student behaviour look like for independent student work? Independent student work. Let's be absolutely clear. Most students find this difficult because you've actually asked them to do some work. We teachers are very good at doing work for young people, but we can't do that for the whole lesson, of course. It'd be ridiculous. So we have to put it over to them because we want independent students. So they have to be focused. They have to take care of the equipment. They're not disturbing or distracting. They're following instructions and they complete the task, whatever that is. And that may be different for different students. We may have adapted the learning, may have adapted the task that you ask them to do. But they still have to complete the work. It's no good finishing 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes, the end of the lesson, later with nothing on their paper. So independent student work, what does appropriate student behaviour? This is the line that you are holding. This is what happens in your lesson. This is your expectation. Number 3, what does appropriate behaviour look like for paired or group discussions? Pre-agreed noise levels. Pre-agreed, it's a discussion, but it's not a shouting match. Okay, it's not a football match. It's not chanting. It's not shouting out. It's a discussion. So communication, that's what we're working on. You can be explicit about this. Remember, a lot of the time when I talk about behaviour, I talk about practicing behaviour. They're practicing communication skills, the ability to talk, to discuss, to listen, to participate. And I mean, I always push that you can get with young people to actually acknowledge contributions from each other. It is possible, even year 9, even year 9, you can get to the point where they are prepared to say that was a great. I mean, I'd never thought of that. That's what I like because it's learning together, it's building together. It's gratitude, it's collaborative and cooperation. So actually getting to the point where young people acknowledge a good contribution from somebody else, it is possible. Those are the 3 learning behaviours and the expectations around what that would look like for a student. Now, how do you get consistency around these behaviours? So it's a good question, because consistency is king. That's what we want in school. So I've mentioned your expectations. What happens in your classroom? Why you are stood up in front of these young people, working with young people, and the values. Now that's easy in our trust, because the values of our schools, the value of the trust, the values, what, how we see education is very clear. In some of your schools, it's literally in every classroom. It's plastered around the school. That is what we do here. This is how we do things here. If it's not, but it's still the expectations of your classroom. I talk about easy no's. Um, Young people, year 9, year 10, year 11, year 7 and 8 less so, but arguably just as much at the moment. We'll push. Can we do this? Can we do that? As a teacher, you're a figure of authority, and you can easily say no. Can I sit next to Mum? No. Are we watching a DVD? No. You know, I mean, that's just part of being a teacher. But get used to saying that. You get used to you know, there are things that you do and that you don't do. Okay, easy no's. And that fits into, remind yourself that you're the teacher. You're the teacher. You work together with the young people, but you are in charge of that classroom. Yeah, you work together. You work collaboratively, you support the young people, but you also challenge the young people, and that comes from you as a teacher. And that's how you get, you know, you're consistent about what you say yes to and what you say no to. You're consistent about your expectations. You're consistent about how much the young people in your class mean to you, how much your subject means to you, and how much you want the best for them. You're unwavering on that. That's how you get consistency. Boundaries, like the easy no's, speaks for itself. And if you go back to session 1, I say this probably in most sessions I do on behaviour. Remember that we operate a balancing act between support and challenge. We challenge the young people because of our expectations, because of the work we set, because of the rigour of the academic standards of our work. We challenge them and we also support them. That is what working together looks like in the classroom. And that allows you to say, that's how we do it in this class. That's how we do it in this class. Have a think about this other expectation, a routine for classroom entry. Just one more, and then I think I've given enough. I mean, I do think that there are people in this group who do this as, you know, they're a long way into this, but I know that there's people watching this who are very early in their careers, and this might be the first time that they've really thought about routines or expectations. It's never a bad time to review and reset expectations. So here's something about entry into a classroom. You know, arriving on time, lineups. Not every school does lineups. I know that they're more informal, but where you can, a lineup outside, even if it's only for a short while, a lineup, and the students come in on your terms. It's your classroom, and that allows you then to meet and greet, but also do the other setting of expectations as they come in. Uniform, mood. You know, you're a good reader of the class and a good reader of mood. So they come in and they come in on your terms. And if they're not ready to come in, they just wait a second. Just take the time to wait a second. Just wait there. No, don't walk off. Just wait there 2 seconds. When you're ready, okay, now come in. They sit in their own seat. They complete the starter, do now activity, and then you can easily see. Being on the door allows you to anticipate, allows you to look down the corridor, allows you to look around the corner, into the nooks and crannies where sometimes young people can be delayed, and you get them out and you recognise and you see and you get them into your classroom. Now, there are lots of routines in your classroom, and this is a deliberately messy side, because all of these things happen in school, around school, all day, every day. Students needing help, giving out books, illness, but they are things that you know are going to happen. And having a routine for all of these, this is what I'm going to do when we get a visitor. You may not have had a visitor yet, but what are you going to do when a visitor comes? Well, how are you going to enter the hall? Some of these will be set by the school, but having in advance prepared, knowing what you're going to do in these situations. If a young person hasn't been ill in your classroom yet, then think about what you're going to do. Think about what you're going to do if a student is actually sick in your lesson to minimize the disruption to learning. Okay, it's worth thinking about. And a deliberately messy side, because these can pop up at any time, but think about these and your routines for all of these. Okay, a little bit of a think piece, really. I wanted to give you something. I mean, I'll talk through, but if you wanted to do, I'll talk through the rest of the slides, obviously. But if you just want to pause it and just think about behaviour in your classroom. And I've given you three little case studies. You know, we're approaching February, approaching a halfway point. You know the young people, you've seen behaviours displayed. Consider these three students and what you could do if these are your students at this point in the year, January, February, at this point in the year. What could you do to adapt the planning for your next lesson to ensure that you get the best out of these three students? Now, this is always, I talk a lot about fire prevention and firefighting. These are three students that could be in any of our classes at any times. Maybe one of them, maybe two, maybe all three. It's worth just taking a moment to think about, well, what would you do? Just one thing. What would you do next lesson to support student A, to support student B, or to support student C? Have a think. Okay, welcome back. I'd love to see what you've what you've come up with for these. If you're looking for an extension task on this, what if student A, B, and C were all one student? And that is the complexity of behaviours we can see in a classroom. That instead of being three separate students, those characteristics come in one student. That's how complicated it can get. And if you want to pause again, and if that was one student, would you do anything different? And it's important, don't forget you can ask for help. You know, we work in a school. There's other teachers, maybe more experienced teachers in your department. There may be a head of department. If you're a head of department, there may be a senior leader. If you're a senior leader, there's the SEND department. There may be a TA that is expert in this. I'm a big believer in asking for help. When I come into your schools, when I go into Mercy schools, when I go into schools outside the trust, I often ask for help from the pastoral department. Know the young people and have relationships with the young people that will support me if I'm going to do any sort of work with a class or with an individual student. So never be afraid to ask for help with that work. Just a little think piece as we approach 20 minutes into the session. Here's a little quote. I like putting this out there just to get you thinking. Children began to be the tyrants of their households. They no longer rose from their seats when an elder entered the room. They contradicted their parents, chatted before company, gobbled up the treats on their table. They especially tyrannised their schoolmasters. Okay, that's a quote. And I'm a history teacher by trade, so it's from the past. Have a little think and come up with a suggestion for when that quote came from, what era that quote came from. Now, when I ask this question, I often hear the 19th century. Sometimes, the 1930s, the 1940s. Sometimes the 19th century, 1800s. The quote actually comes from the Greek. And I share this quote to remind you that children behave the way they do, and they always have done. Children are children, and we have been judges of that behaviour throughout history. So don't be surprised by their behaviour. And it also means that we've developed lots of ways of dealing with this behaviour. So let's continue the behaviour journey and have a look at a few things. I ask you not to, first of all, don't take it personally. And this is one of the hardest things in the whole behaviour piece. Don't take it personally, but it can be intensely personal. I know the data. I know a lot of teachers leave teaching because of behaviour. So I'm not ignorant of that. So I don't say it flippantly. It's not meant naively to say do not take it personally. But don't take it. If you take it personally, it is debilitating and it will wear you down. Remember what I said about separating the behaviour from the child. Separating the behaviour from the child. Okay, that helps you not to take it personally. It's their behaviours we don't like, not the young person. I ask you to ask yourself two very important questions. What's really going on and what can you really do about it? What's really going on and what can you do about it? And if you frame the behaviour challenge in those terms, then you've got a really good chance of getting to the bottom of it. And to engage with behaviour, to engage with poor behaviour, to engage with behaviour on any level, I'll keep poor out of it. Then there's a language that we can use. And I'm a big believer in 3 words in particular. So, for example, I will often, when I start, I still do work with the most challenging behaviour. And I always start with this is what we're going to talk about. So you can actually stop using the B word and stop using behaviour and use words, for example, like relationships. Okay, relationships. I'm the teacher, you're the learner. If we're going to work together and if you're going to work successfully in this lesson, then you need to do this because those are good learning behaviours, because I'll do this. Now, part of being a teacher, I'm afraid, is challenging you and supporting you. But if you couch that in terms of the relationship, the professional relationship, then you're not even mentioning the behaviour word. You're showing how important that student is to you and their work. You're showing that you are a teacher, a professional. There may be challenge involved, but there'll be a lot of support as well. And that is a far more helpful word than talking about behaviour, which will automatically elicit a defensive response. Okay, you have to talk about behaviour at some point. You might actually talk about the rules. You might talk about the consequences. You might talk about choices. But taking it to a relational, will get you a lot further than just simply talking about behaviour. Could talk about responsibility, relationship, responsibility. The young person has a responsibility for their behaviour. Okay, and this is probably one of the trickiest things because there seems to be generally the social contract, whatever term you use, appears to, there seems to be an absence of responsibility from top to bottom. And young people have picked up on this, so it's not their fault. It's somebody else's fault. Somebody else was doing much worse than them. I didn't do that. You didn't see me doing that. Where's your evidence? But as a teacher, you want them to take responsibility. So they talk from I, and you just use something as simple as that. You talk from I did, and then you start to build some responsibility. Because at the end of the day, if anything's going to happen different with behaviour, it has to be the young person that does it. We're teachers. We're in control of us. The young person is in control of them. So if it's going to be, it's down to me being the child. We've said relationships, we've said responsibility. This is a great one. Potential. You could be different next time you're in my lesson. You could be different in the next minute. You could be different. The idea that there's a growth piece. We talked about growth mindset, but potential. Now, there's a lot of work that we can do around this, and I'm going to quickly summarize those 3 things. But if you just hold those 3 words, relationships, responsibility, and potential as a language of behaviour. All of a sudden, you have suddenly got really quite sophisticated, quite nuanced about behaviour, and actually flipped the narrative into something else that actually you might get some engagement with, you might actually get some work on. Let's look at these in a little bit more detail. I'll give you a chance to, but before I do that, I'll give you a chance to pause and just, I know you've got your notebooks there, electronic or paper-based, but have a think about something that surprised you, something that's interested you, something that you've heard before, an action point, active learning, and I always share my details at the end of the slide, or I'm in schools often enough, but do stop me and ask me if, or email me if there's something that you want to find out more about. Okay, relationships. Let's take relationships. The language of behaviour. Relationships. All the teachers in this school hate me. All the teachers in this school hate me. I hear this daily in school from young people who are unhappy at school. And let's be honest, challenging behaviour is on a sliding scale, a large sliding scale. But I regularly hear this from young people who are just a little bit unhappy to young people who are really struggling quite profoundly at school. All the teachers in this school hate me. Now, instead of just get on with it, or something sarcastic or snarky about that, how could we use the language of relationships in order to challenge and support a young person that says that? What about the most useful for me is opinion versus fact. Okay, opinion versus fact. Is it a fact that all teachers in this school hate? Of course, it's perception. It's opinion, and we live in a time where opinion is presented as fact, and young people are falling prey to this. But it's not a fact, and in fact, we wouldn't do this job of teachers if we didn't care deeply about young people, and we certainly wouldn't get up every day and come into school if we hated young people. So we can challenge that with a statement as simple as that: opinion or fact. You could deflect the young person away from the comment. Well, whether it's true or not, would you let a comment like that? I'd hate to think any teacher would actually articulate their dislike for a student, but if it was said, would you be so easily knocked back? People say things. People say on the other hand, we're talking about a perception. Are you going to be? And you start to talk about resilience and not letting people live rent free in our head. That sort of resilience conversation. But straight away, moving away from just get on with it, ignoring or diminishing, actually engage with it and say one of those two things. There's lots of things we could say. Hate's way too strong. Maybe you've just annoyed, disrupted, or interrupted. Maybe hate's too strong. Maybe a different sort of judgment. Maybe the teachers are trying to offer you some feedback. Okay, the teacher really got annoyed. Well, maybe, they're human beings. Maybe they're offering you some feedback. Your students. Again, that's a reminder from session 1. You know where you can go with this with those young people. If you've got a very anxious, a very upset, very emotionally fraught situation, you're going to choose your language very carefully. But as teachers, if we use this, if we have a language that we can use, we can quickly support and get young people back on track. maybe there's parts of your behaviour. Let's introduce that to the young person. It's not you personally. Don't take it personally. Maybe they don't like the fact that you call out in lesson. Maybe they don't like the fact that you get up and disturb other people. Maybe they don't like the fact that you walk around. So split it out, and then you can talk about to the young person about that. At the end of the day, it's a really big thing for me. It's a really big thing for young people to learn. All they can't control a teacher. They think they can, but they can't. They can't control an adult. They can only control their response. It's the only thing they can control. So in this situation, it's really important. School is really important to them, so they're going to control their response. And they're not going to escalate this. They're not going to fly off the handle. They're not going to start screaming and shouting. They're going to let you maybe go and talk to the teacher. They're maybe going to let you ask pastoral staff to find out a bit more about what's been going on. But you've engaged with the comment in a more helpful way than just all the teachers, than just get on with it, which is what we're busy people. We've got a lot to do. We've got 5 lessons in a day, so there might be good reason for saying just get on with it. But if we just take those 2 or 3 minutes to have a conversation, to use the language of relationships, we can maybe flip a situation. I'll just do a couple more. So on responsibility, schools, responsibility, schools too much like hard work. Okay, I'm not going to talk through this. You can pause it now and look at this. But so this is what young people say. They're trying to provoke us. They're trying to get out of doing the work, and all manner of reasons why they say things like this. But we talk about responsibility, and we can say things that help support them, because it's probably a little bit of low-level anxiety. I can't do it. I don't get it. I don't want to do it. School's too hard. Okay, but something beyond pull your socks up or because I say so will get you to a much better place with young people. Now, on this one, I would like you to pause. Have I got a fourth? Yes, I would like you to pause because I think this is really important. We've got young people increasingly in school who can't do, their self-confidence is shot, their self-esteem, their self-belief is non-existent. I just can't do this. Okay, and in that situation, you need to be very balanced in your support and challenge. Very balanced, and think about support challenge. So I've listed 4 possible responses to that. Just have a think about which is support, which is challenge, which is a little bit of both, which would you use with children in your class, which wouldn't you use with children in your class. Just explore, reflect, why wouldn't you use it? Is there a word that you can change in there? So when you've got potential, have a pause the slide and have a look and see where these fit on the support or challenge matrix, and see, in doing that, reflect on what you would change about any of those. Because at the end of the welcome back, and because at the end of the day, we want students that are independent. This is what we want: students that can self-regulate, that can manage their emotions, that are focused, that can get on with the work that we set, that can do as they're told, that can go around school, operate around school, learn effectively. Final bit of the session, last 15 minutes or so, we're going to talk about now. When we talk about de-escalation, I recognise that there is de-escalation, a very technical de-escalation piece that may involve physical restraint, for example. I'm not talking about de-escalation. I'm talking about emotional escalation. I'm talking about raised temperatures. I'm talking about raised voices. I'm talking about arguments. I'm talking about disruption. Okay, in the classroom. which can happen at any point with any class at any time. We do all we can day in, day out to avoid escalation. And I call that pre-escalation. Basically, all the work that we've done in the previous two sessions is about pre-escalation. It's about fire prevention. It's about doing all of those things that avoid getting into a firefighting situation, avoid getting into an escalated or a heightened emotional state. So a couple of slides about pre-escalation. And what I mean about pre-escalation is us as teachers. You know, Paul Dix tells us we are, you know, when we change, when, you know, how we are influences most of what happens in a classroom. Okay, and the idea that we are the decisive element, we set the weather. We want our classrooms to be joyous, celebratory, inspirational, healing rather than humiliating, and seeing the best part. You know, what we don't want, okay, it's January, it's cold, it's the summer, it's boiling hot, everybody's tired. You know, whatever time of year we're at, you know, it's hard to generate that, but that's on us. The better, you know, as a teacher, can we bring some joy, celebration, inspiration, some healing to the classroom in order that the weather is set in a way that helps everybody. You know, what I'm really careful about is not judging young people on their worst day. I personally don't want to be judged on my worst day, and let's be honest, we can all have bad days. We're human beings. We can all have bad days. So I really guard against judging young people on their worst day. They can have a bad day. Now, what we don't want is that bad day becoming a bad week, bad month, bad term, but that's on us. We can help them have better days. Okay, so one strategy from pre-escalation. It's a Doug Limov from Teach Like a Champion, and I swear by this. Particularly if you've got a difficult class, think about when you've done your planning for that class, when you've been to your scheme and you've decided what you're going to do in the lesson. Take 5 minutes to just look at that planning through the eyes of a student in your class who doesn't get it, a student in your class who's struggling, a student in your class. I know you'll have done all the special needs bit. I know that you'll have checked that you've covered that, you've adapted accordingly. But is there a kid who just doesn't get it? You know, what could you do tomorrow? How could you adapt to prevent that challenge? You know, thinking about how they were last lesson, what the challenge was, how can you adapt it? And just 5 minutes extra planning could save 15 minutes, and I'd argue sometimes even longer, of heartache and challenge in that lesson. Just look at the lesson through the eyes of a student who doesn't get it and adapt accordingly. That is fire prevention. And you can actually, you might not say anything to the young person, but sometimes it doesn't hurt to tell. I've changed this, Lewis. You know, I've changed the lesson deliberately. So you're doing, I want you to do this, and it's going to look like that. And yeah, just the 3 questions, but those 3 questions, and if you get those, yeah, there is something else to do, but I want you to concentrate on that. Or for today, I want you to sit here because I'm going to work closely with you, or Miss or Sir is going to work closely with you. So you've changed something, let the young person, and then, you know, if you get pushed back, if the challenge is still there, I've tried really hard to make this as supportive as possible for you, Lewis. You know, I need something back from you. Okay, so double planning. I've split down de-escalation into 4 Ds. I think that's is that an alliteration? I'm trying to remember my rhetorical devices is it's an alliteration, I think. So distract, deflect. It's not the rule of 3. It's a rule of 4. So distract, deflect, and doubt, and divert. And now within that, I mean, there is a whole host. I see teachers doing this all the time in really effective ways. So, you know, this is not a comprehensive list. It's a selection of things that I use or I've seen around classrooms recently that can help you to de-escalate. Distract, deflect, and divert. Whenever I present something like this, I always say, it's whether or not it suits you as a teacher. It's certainly something that you have to try out, try it on. It's if you know it, then fine, and you use it. But there might be something in there new that you can just try. So, de-escalation, distract, deflect, and divert. Some of them, for the seasoned practitioners in the room, some of them overlap. Some of them deserve to be in more than one. So it could be in distract and divert, deflect and out. So just bear with me. There's a load of strategies here that can avoid escalation and reduce disruption. Be positive distraction. Distract the young person with a positive response. Okay, I've seen much better from you. Remember as well, in your head, if you're pushing back on this and saying, but it's disruption, Mark, but it's low level disruption. This is not, I'm not talking about a fight in a class. I'm not talking about homophobic abuse shouted across the class. I'm not talking about something thrown at you. That is major disruption. That is an SLT call out. That is a serious incident. Okay, that will be dealt with. I'm talking about it's low level. It's tapping the desk. It's swinging on the seat. It's not passing the glue stick, pulling it back. That's funny. It's calling. It's low level disruptive behaviour. I've seen much better from you. Okay, back on track. That's enough. I've seen better. Appeal to their better nature. Distract by giving them a job. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, well, we'll leave that for a minute. Come and do this. We'll leave that for a minute. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, that's done now. Now we're back on. You've had your conversation. You've had a chat with Lewis. Now back on that. Distract them back. I mean, actually giving them a job can be. Just come out here a sec. Yeah, come out here a sec. Let me just explain something to you. Get them away from whatever it is it's doing. Get them away from it. Distract them from the disruption. Do a learning activity with them. Go through the task. Go through that, and then go back having removed the distraction, whatever it was that was doing that. Use a name. Name's really important, but we use non-verbals. Disappointment is your teacher's superpower. It's not what you're looking for. I'm in classrooms all the time. An easy one, without even saying anything, is just shaking my head. Some children will go, "What's his problem?" Very few will challenge that. And trust me, I go into a lot of classrooms, and sometimes those classrooms have been disrupted. But a teacher that calmly, the kids know what they're doing. They know they shouldn't really be doing it, even the repeat offenders. So just the shaking of the head, the fingers on lips. Sit down, calmly, guiding, very careful, no contact, very careful, but guiding through, just pointing in the direction. Okay, but teacher disappointment. Okay, well, I'm going to sort this out now. Yeah, we'll sort it out now. Yeah, no problem. Okay. Easiest thing to distract from disruptive behaviour is to remind them of the classroom rule. Ready to learn is the easiest classroom rule. Ready to learn. Yep. Okay. You've had a bit of fun with the glue stick. You've had a bit of fun with your mate. You've had a bit of you've caught up about EastEnders. Now it's ready to learn, because that's what we're doing. Ready to learn, or whichever rule it is. And again, there's an overlap with one of the other D's, but you're getting the point. Distract. Deflect. Yeah, deflect. So I thought I'd skipped a slide, but it's just an extra bullet point. That's not for now. I use that a lot. That's a personal favourite. This is lesson time, learning time. That's not for now. Avoid any judgment about whether they're talking, who they're talking to, what they're talking about. That's not for now. It's learning time. Just a name like disappointment. Just a cough. Excuse me. That's enough for many low-level disruptors. Excuse me. Yeah. Oh, can I just say? Yeah. That's enough. They know they shouldn't be doing what they're doing, and it's corrected. Obviously, all of these, Come to session 4 and find out when these aren't enough, when these don't work, more challenging behaviours. But for a lot of young people, this is enough. Tactically avoid. This is always controversial. What are you saying that you'd tactically avoid? Okay, tactically. Some things pass. Some things get sorted out by the children themselves. Lewis, shh, stop. No, I'm not talking anymore, Lewis. I'm doing my work. Okay, so you don't actually have to intervene in it. So you always, sometimes you just let it, and it's just knowing that teacher experience, knowing when to let it go, but you always follow up. So sometimes I'll leave something, but you know, the young people know that you've seen it, so you might leave it, let it just settle, let it sort itself out, but then you always come back to it. Maybe you pull the student to one side, or maybe you keep them behind at the end of the lesson, but it's not something that you're going to put a big spotlight on at this point. De-escalation, we're not going to put a big spotlight on it, but we're certainly going to come back to it. Never ever leave things without following them up. Always follow them up. That is how you establish your teacher authority. You see everything and you challenge everything, but you choose when you do that. Provide the equipment. Blimey, this blew up on Twitter the other week. It always comes up. Look, I'm a giver of pens. Okay, and that's, some people say no, learned helplessness and all that, but for some people, for some kids, it's a reason, it's a deliberate tactic to stop them from working. So I just give them a pen, and here's how I do it. I give them a magic pen, a pen that will enable them to complete all the work better than they've ever done before. So I must have that pen back exactly as it looks. Yeah, not with a missing lid, not ground into the carpet on the classroom floor, not thrown anywhere, because it's a magic pen. So they get the pen and I get it back, they get the work done, and then you can have a conversation about organisation, about equipment, and you might find out that they just don't care. But you also might find out actually that there's nowhere for them at home to put their school bag. Their school bag's regularly raided by their older brother or their younger sister, you know, all kinds of reasons why they haven't got a pen. It's not always because they choose not to have a pen. But at the end of the day, they get the work done, and that is the most important thing. Doubt. Good one. The old grey area. Okay, doubt. I'm sure you don't want a detention. Okay, there you go. I'm sure you don't want a detention. Something different, please. Thank you. You know, you're tightening up a little bit here. There's a little bit of challenge in that, a little bit of authority in that. I can do something that you won't like. And of course, kids say, "Oh, I don't care." I go, "Give it." Well, I don't want to give you a detention. Okay, so I need some different behaviour. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm not sure what you were doing, but it didn't look like work. I'm not going to get. You're showing that you're not going to get into an argument about whether they were talking, whether they were pulling the glue stick, whether they were, whatever it is. You're not going to get into that. It didn't look like work. So I need you focused. Thank you. De-escalation. You're not escalating up. I don't want an argument about it. You know, you're the teacher. You're entitled to challenge. You know, but you don't want an argument about it. Okay, very clear. I'm not making an issue about it, so we'll just, you know, choose to stop now and carry on with it. You've got the idea. I'm here to help you learn. There's no doubt about that. But if they're trying to turn it, if the young person is trying to turn it into a big thing, I'm just here to help you learn. In a similar way to distract, ask a question. Okay, are you okay? Are you okay? You're showing concern. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Well, I'm just checking because, you know, work, instruct. Sometimes we jump quickly to what they're doing wrong. So instruct on the action that you want. Okay, which is usually work, isn't it? Or quiet, or kind hands, or that way, or movement down the corridor. So what do you actually want? Avoid the quick jump to the negative behaviour and get to the behaviour that you actually want. Really good ways. Use the learning to manage the behaviour. They're working, you know exactly what they should be doing, and so you're marking and annotating. You can just do that visually. You know what a page should look like because you know your activities, you know your classroom planning, you know what they should be producing. So you're looking over their shoulder and that looks great, that looks great. But then for some young people, it's actually you're going to stop. You can say, oh no, spelling mistake there, or add an extra bit there. And that the management of the work, the management of the learning gives you the ability to manage their behaviour. There you go. I'll leave you to read through the last couple on there because I think you're getting the idea. I'm sure that you could add to these. I certainly could add. I put things on these slides. I take things off these slides. It's never a complete list. I'm not offering that. I'm offering you the principle of de-escalation within these 4 Ds. There's lots of things on there. You can go back and have a look at the slides and pick up 1 or 2 that you know, but hopefully 1 or 2 that you haven't thought about. Really important. You know, I don't want to lose it as a teacher. You know, none of us do. Why would you want to do that? Lose your temper. I really lost my temper. You know, it does happen. It has happened. But I'm really proud to say that, I can remember the less than 5 times in my long teaching career where I lost my temper, because you don't want to lose your temper. You don't want to lose, because that's when you make poor decisions. Okay, and that means that you stay in authority, you stay in calm authority, and you don't get into that heightened emotional state where the decisions might be less effective. And by de-escalating your dignity, and that's really important because your professionalism, but also the students remain intact. A calm authority is where we want to be. Thank you. I've gone over just over 50 minutes, but it gives you time within the CPD hour. I always like to give you time, take this in, think about it. My email's there. You've got a feedback form. Maybe you're following these sessions through to 4 and 5. So if there's something specific that you want, please put it on the feedback form. Basically, in 4 and 5, we look at challenging behaviour. So do get in touch. Do drop a line either through the feedback, but do take the time now, please, to just think about what you've heard. You've committed 50 minutes. You've listened to me. Well done. You've listened to me for 50 minutes. Just give yourself the reflection time to take it on board. What interests you? What surprised you? And are there any action points for tomorrow? Enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the rest of your week, and hopefully see some of you in school soon. Thank you.